The Pope is not dead. The secret Vatican escape. The last breath of truth. It all began on a quiet, overcast morning in Rome, when the world awoke to headlines claiming that the Pope had passed away peacefully in his sleep. Global networks rushed to broadcast the solemn announcement, while the Vatican released a single-page statement confirming his death, but offering no further details. No cause of death, no images of his body, no footage of a papal blessing, funeral preparations, or even the traditional tolling of St. Peter's bells. Instead, the city fell into an eerie silence, and the faithful were left with a cold sense of incompletion. Millions began mourning a man they had revered for years, but a small portion of the public, curious and skeptical, started to question everything. In the age of information, where nearly every moment of a public figure's life is documented, how could the passing of the most visible religious leader on earth remain so shrouded in ambiguity? Journalists noticed inconsistencies almost immediately. Why had his personal physician not been seen since 2 days before the supposed death? Why were Vatican gates unusually closed to the press? And why had the official papal Twitter account gone silent only after the news had spread, not before? These weren't just anomalies, they were red flags. A growing number of investigators, analysts, and even former members of the church began to uncover strange patterns in the timeline. Whispers emerged from Vatican insiders that something unprecedented was unfolding behind the sacred walls. Now more than ever, we need to ask, was this really a peaceful departure of an aging man of faith, or the first move in a larger, calculated maneuver to vanish from public life? What you're about to hear is a story hidden behind centuries of secrecy, one that challenges faith, power, and truth itself. If this is your kind of mystery, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more revelations like this, and leave a comment below, because your voice might be the one that cracks the code. Stay with us. The truth is just beginning to surface. Traces in the shadows. As hours turned into days, it became increasingly clear that the Vatican was withholding something. The expected ceremonial processions never materialized. No cardinals addressed the media with personal reflections, and the Vatican City seemed frozen in time, as though life had stopped, but not because of grief. Independent photographers captured peculiar images, figures walking behind curtained windows of the Apostolic Palace long after the announcement of death. Security cameras that once monitored every inch of the papal residence had gone dark. A drone operator flying a private device over the city claimed to see silhouettes moving near the Pope's chambers on the very night he was said to have passed. What kind of death leaves behind footprints in the living? Within days, former Swiss guards began speaking to foreign journalists under conditions of anonymity. One recounted a night unlike any other, when all guards were ordered to abandon their usual posts and report to internal stations without explanation. Black vehicles with no plates entered through the North Service Gate, normally reserved for deliveries. Several Vatican staff members who normally worked in the residence were told to leave early that evening and not to return until further notice. And perhaps most chilling of all, a nurse from a nearby hospital claimed she saw a man matching the Pope's description being wheeled into an underground transport van hours after the official announcement. Her voice trembled as she told a reporter, "He wasn't dead. He looked sedated, but alive." At first, these accounts seemed like scattered noise, rumors born from grief and confusion. But as testimonies piled up and official Vatican channels remained conspicuously silent, the theory began to solidify. The Pope hadn't died. He had vanished, and not alone. Those helping him were either fiercely loyal or deeply afraid of the institution they served. Whatever truth he had uncovered, it was powerful enough to make him disappear and force a centuries-old institution to fake a death on the world stage. If you're following this trail, hit the like button and share this video with someone who believes in digging deeper than the headlines. Because this is only the beginning, and the shadows are just starting to whisper. The man who knew too much. In every story of silence, there is someone who speaks too loudly to ignore. That voice came in the form of Father Matteo Bernini, a mid-level Vatican archivist with an impeccable record, known for his obsession with transparency and his access to highly classified documents. A week before the Pope's alleged death, Bernini had requested a private audience, citing urgent concerns regarding internal Vatican protocols and unverified financial movements. The request was denied. But what happened next raised eyebrows. Father Bernini disappeared, not just from his post, but from the city itself. His apartment was left untouched, his ID badge found on the floor of his office. Inside his drawer, investigators found a sealed envelope labeled simply, "He knows." That envelope would become the nucleus of the growing conspiracy. It was intercepted and leaked by a former intelligence operative turned whistleblower. Its contents? Handwritten notes in Latin referencing a covert operation titled Project Petros, with chilling phrases like simulate mortality, activate transfer corridors, and preserve the light. But even more striking was a list of names, high-ranking church officials, some already declared missing, others still active but refusing interviews. The letter warned of a self-coup from within and hinted that the Pope had uncovered a centuries-old faction embedded deep within the institution, operating parallel to official Vatican doctrine. Bernini believed this faction had orchestrated scandals, controlled narratives, and was preparing to shift global religious alignment under the guise of succession. The letter ended with a final plea: he cannot die. If he does, the world will sleep forever. It was this chilling phrase that reignited the theories and energized the global search for truth. The Vatican, when confronted with the letter, dismissed it as a forgery. But linguistic experts confirmed the handwriting matched Father Bernini's past correspondence. A priest, a truth, a vanishing pope. The pattern could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. Are we truly witnessing a divine resignation or a desperate man fleeing from a darkness older than his own papacy? If this story has your mind racing, subscribe now and comment your theories below, because what comes next will redefine everything we thought we knew. The escape route beneath Rome. Beneath the ancient stones of Vatican City lies a forgotten world. While tourists marvel at St. Peter's Basilica and scholars admire the Vatican Library, few are aware of the intricate web of tunnels and chambers that snake beneath the Holy City. Built over centuries, some as old as the Roman Empire, these passages were originally designed for protection during sieges, secret communications, and the discreet movement of high-ranking clergy. But in recent decades, they have fallen out of official use, or so it seemed. According to the leaked dossier marked Project Petros, one particular route, codenamed Via Lumen, had been reactivated. It began behind the papal chambers and led to a reinforced subtunnel beneath the apostolic archives, exiting nearly 2 kilometers away in the Trastevere district, inside an abandoned monastery. Locals in Trastevere began reporting strange activity weeks before the Pope's supposed death. Blacked-out vans parked near the ancient structure during the early hours of the morning. Unmarked crates were quietly unloaded by men in clerical clothing, accompanied by what appeared to be plainclothes military personnel. Residents dismissed it as a restoration project. But then came the night of the announcement. Multiple witnesses recall seeing a convoy leave the Vatican through secondary gates just hours before the death was made public. One elderly woman, a former custodian of the church in Trastevere, claimed she saw someone matching the Pope's likeness, surrounded by guards, hurried through the monastery's back entrance. He looked pale, but alive, she whispered, not like someone who had just died. Satellite images later revealed a new heat signature in the area of the monastery's crypt, consistent with underground human presence and power activity. Independent investigators who attempted to approach the site were denied access by individuals claiming to be part of a private security firm. Inside sources suggest that from there, the Pope may have been flown by private aircraft to an undisclosed location. But the key to understanding this escape lies not only in the how, but in the why. What truth was so dangerous that the Pope had to leave in silence, through ancient catacombs, with the entire world believing he was dead? Like and comment below if you believe this was more than just a relocation, because the journey is far from over, and what lies ahead will challenge every belief you hold. The secret sanctuary, deep within the Alps, where the borders of Switzerland, Italy, and Austria blur into a jagged horizon, lies a forgotten Benedictine monastery known only to a select few. Hidden by forests and protected by centuries-old laws of extraterritoriality, This place was once used during the Second World War to protect artifacts and individuals too precious to fall into the hands of enemies. It is here, according to multiple converging sources, that the Pope found refuge after his secret departure from Vatican City. Officially decommissioned and no longer under church jurisdiction, the monastery is owned by a private religious trust, one rumored to have deep connections to the Vatican's most clandestine operations. Drone footage analyzed by investigative journalists revealed sporadic movement inside the structure. Solar panels had been installed, a helipad cleared from snow, and an encrypted satellite uplink now protruded from the chapel's bell tower. Locals in nearby villages, when approached, became visibly uncomfortable when asked about the site. One shepherd, only speaking under anonymity, claimed he saw an elderly man in white robes walking along the tree line, always escorted by two armed guards. Another villager recalled a strange influx of medical supplies delivered by helicopter late at night. While none of this directly confirms the Pope's presence, every clue aligns with the Vatican's known contingency protocols for high-profile religious leaders under threat. Inside the monastery, according to one insider's anonymous email, the Pope is not hiding. He is writing, dictating letters, recording messages, and assembling what has been described as a spiritual manifesto meant to be released only in the event of his confirmed death. It is said that he fears this document will never see the light if he remains within the grasp of the institution he once led. His sanctuary is both prison and pulpit, a place where the truth is prepared in silence, awaiting the moment to break free. The question remains, how long can a man like him stay buried in secrecy before the walls begin to crack? Hit that like button and comment where you think he truly is. Because if these accounts are even half true, the world is not just missing a pope, it's ignoring a silent revolution in the making. The silence of the church. As the theories surrounding the Pope's disappearance gained traction, the institution he once led adopted a posture that was both strategic and unsettling. Absolute silence. No new statements were issued beyond the initial announcement of death. The Vatican's official social media channels returned to routine scripture quotes, avoiding any reference to the late pontiff's funeral or successor. The College of Cardinals, traditionally convened within days after a papal passing, delayed its conclave indefinitely without explanation. This break in centuries-old protocol only deepened suspicions. How could an institution so embedded in ritual suddenly abandon its own traditions without public justification? Behind closed doors, according to a former Vatican aide, fear had paralyzed the leadership. Cardinals were divided between those who believed the Pope had indeed fled to protect himself and those who feared the consequences of confirming it. Some advocated transparency, while others insisted on containment. Internal communications were reportedly encrypted, meetings held in secret locations, and at least one high-ranking cleric was allegedly placed under house arrest in his residence near Piazza Navona. Meanwhile, the international media, once relentless in papal coverage, curiously stepped back. Major networks reduced coverage, retracted investigative reports, and in some cases, removed content without notice. It was as if an invisible hand was pressing down on the world's lens, forcing eyes away from the truth. And then came the substitute. A new figure appeared briefly at a mass in the Sistine Chapel, described as an interim ceremonial authority. Dressed in vestments similar to the Pope's, his face remained partially hidden during the event. No name was provided. No camera angles revealed him clearly. This unprecedented act led many to believe the Church wasn't just suppressing the truth, it was simulating continuity, a ghost pontiff to keep the illusion intact while the real one remained in exile. The silence was no longer just a void, it had become an answer in itself. If you're watching this and your instincts are sounding alarms, now is the time to comment your thoughts and share this video. Because silence in this case may be the loudest confession of all. The final message. In the chaos that followed the Pope's supposed death, a message surfaced. Not in public, but through a carefully orchestrated leak to a fringe theological forum based in Argentina. The text, unsigned but linguistically consistent with the Pope's past writings, began circulating as an open letter to the faithful. It was poetic yet urgent, cryptic yet precise, and its opening line sent chills across every reader who dared believe it was real. When silence becomes a weapon, only the whispered word can awaken the living. The letter was not a farewell, it was a warning. In its pages, the author denounced structures that preach holiness while devouring the sacred, and lamented a church whose hands have grown too accustomed to silver and too distant from wounds. The message spoke of betrayal, not by enemies of the faith, but by those cloaked in its highest robes. It referenced manipulation of truth, appropriation of wealth, and the misuse of papal authority to shield unspeakable acts. One paragraph in particular stood out, hinting that the Pope had uncovered records related to a covert operation stretching back decades, allegedly involving geopolitical influence campaigns, compromised clergy, and even the infiltration of church offices by external intelligence agencies. "I cannot die," the message said, "not before light touches the tomb of deception that breathes beneath the altar." The language was unmistakably metaphoric, but its meaning wasn't lost on those who followed his teachings closely. This wasn't just a lament, it was a call to rebellion, a spiritual uprising within the walls of tradition. The Vatican immediately denounced the letter as a fabrication, labeling it the work of destabilizing forces seeking to erode the sanctity of the Church. Yet forensic linguists who compared it to dozens of past homilies confirmed more than 94% stylistic compatibility with the Pope's known expressions, metaphors, and sentence construction. More tellingly, a watermark on one of the pages matched the private stationery used in papal correspondence, unavailable to the public. If this letter is genuine, it represents the most explosive religious document since the Dead Sea Scrolls, a message not only to warn, but to ignite. And now we pass it on to you. Hit like if this shocked you, and comment your thoughts, because the last chapter hasn't been written yet. When the world finds out. What happens when the most powerful spiritual voice on earth vanishes, not into death, but into deliberate exile? When the narrative collapses and the illusion shatters, humanity is left standing in front of a mirror it cannot avoid. The idea that the Pope might still be alive, hiding from those within his own church, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about faith, about power, and about how deeply institutions are willing to go to preserve their image. If this conspiracy is real, it's not just a story of a man in white robes fleeing into the shadows. It's a revelation that something sacred has been corrupted, that something holy is at war with itself. What will people believe when the lie becomes undeniable and the silence impossible to defend? Across continents, believers begin to ask questions. Parishioners whisper during Mass. Young priests scroll through leaked documents between confessions. The faithful, torn between loyalty and truth, begin to look not to Rome, but to each other. And in that rupture, something ancient reawakens, the search for meaning beyond hierarchy. In hiding, the Pope becomes more powerful than ever, not as a symbol of authority, but as a symbol of resistance, of sacrifice, of truth that cannot be negotiated. His silence becomes a message louder than any sermon, and his absence, a presence that haunts every corridor of the Vatican. If the truth surfaces, and it will, the Church will be forced to reckon not just with one man's decision, but with every lie buried in its foundations. And you? You're not just a viewer. You're part of this unfolding. What we choose to believe, to question, to investigate, defines the kind of world we live in. So if you've stayed with us through this journey, you're already part of something bigger. Hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to see beyond the curtain. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe the Pope is alive? And if so, what else have they hidden from us?